I used to watch on average 3 Bollywood films every day till 1999 or 2000, on an average. One film that I used to watch over and over and over again was this Mithun Chakraborty film called Dost, about an elephant. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But I was a Bolly buff. All I used to do with my time was either play cricket or watch Bollywood films.
Alright, guys, welcome to another episode of Whose Question Is This? Today we have one of the biggest names in Delhi quizzing, Aryapriya Gangli, aka Arjo. So please welcome Arjo here.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, so Arjo, we'll dive straight in and Abhinav will take.
Thank you.
Arjuda, as I call you, or most of us call you. So what are some of your earliest quizzing memories from schooling days, or probably even before that?
Earliest quizzing memory, if I were to really think about it, I'd have to go back to just informal conversations with my granddad. We still have that. He will suddenly throw in a tidbit from Mughal history and try to nudge. Do you know this? And then if I happen to know that, he'll not come across as too amused at that. So that created a sentiment of, okay, so I'm being tested periodically on something completely arbitrary. I better be prepared. That was one. More on the informal side. On a formal side, it began, I think, with a Maggie quiz in second standard. I hadn't really thought of or even conceived of quizzing as a competitive event where you qualify and then there are teams on stage, all of that. So the Maggie quiz was a first in that sense. We were divided into sections, and there was some sort of a preliminary check, as is usually done in class, to check who are the ones who can perhaps represent the class, the section rather. And we happened to win that particular Maggie quiz. And since then, I mean, it's just been a question of answering the next question or having the wherewithal to answer the next question, really, Yeah, I mean, if I think about it, there are some critical milestones along the way. So, for instance, Bournvita quiz contest, not the TV round, but in the schools, they used to conduct this sort of a questionnaire. If I remember correctly, it used to have MCQs. Yeah, and then that used to basically become a sort of yardstick for the school to pick students to represent at either inter-school or intra-school events. They would get the priority based on the BQC in-class score. So that is how also I began to be seen as someone who can at least represent the section and class in my earlier school. I mean, most of those cases, the eventual BQC round never really transpired because God knows where these BQC informal results got buried in the red tape or bureaucracy of school politics and so on. It also depended in some ways on the kind of clout your school had in the circuit. I don't know if you guys have felt that kind of a pinch, I felt that for a significant part of my school life, where Assembly of God Showers, the school I was in till my 10th, while academics was on fleek and everything else was as per expectations. Extracurriculars and co-curriculars, I never really felt AGCS did a lot towards showcasing its best. So, I mean, this is a very controversial moment in my school journey as well. I changed schools after my 10th. I looked at LaMartine for boys as one of the viable options because they had a strong, going back many decades, a very strong co-curricular, extracurricular activities culture, along with, of course, focusing on academics. And in my 11th and 12th, something happened, and their one teacher has been almost central to this transformation. So she taught us English Lit in 11th and 12th, Shakuntala Datta. And the way she taught us Shakespeare, she didn't dive into the text so much, but made us understand the worth of referencing. What does it mean for a text or a product of culture? Could be a piece of art, could be a film or a literary work. How loaded it is in knowledge that has been transmitted down the ages, right? And if you are in that sort of body of knowledge, you'd make far more sense of the nuances in a body of work, be it literary or filmic or even musical. So her approach to Shakespeare involved telling us about Greek and Roman myths, telling us about Renaissance art, And for me, that really was if I were to use the analogy from the world of drugs, and if quizzing was an addiction, this was the gateway topic for me into quizzing. The gateway of understanding this particular, I know it's controversial, people will accuse and say that this is pretentious and this is Eurocentric and all of that, but it is what it is. This was my first sort of way of thinking about knowledge building up over the ages. And it seemed fascinating that a literary text could be livened up in that manner. So that really was the moment in time where I started to take a proactive interest beyond what I'm, reading in my books. Again, very controversial. I don't know why all of this is very controversial. I think quizzing as a choice is a very controversial sort of decision to make as a hobby, vocation, whatever you call it. So I had a bunch of physics, chemistry, and math tuitions in my 11th and 12th. I didn't enjoy physics a lot. Math and chemistry, I was still enjoying my time understanding the concepts, but physics I did not. And soon that physics NUE almost spilled over into chemistry and math NUE. And I started bunking those tuitions. This is terrible advice for youngsters also in quizzing. But I started bunking those tuitions, but this I hope can redeem my narrative. I used to make my way to Lotsina Road and spend hours at Landmark Bookstore, just sitting in the aisles and reading books, right? And I didn't think I had the finances and I was financially independent enough to go and buy these books at that point, 11th and 12th, with, almost a shoestring pocket money. So what I felt the least I could do was expose myself to the range of books out there, and I started doing that almost systematically and consciously, specifically targeting the leisure from the point of view of tuition time. So that's a sort of a zero-sum game I struck for myself to understand what the trade-off is and what I'm gaining. And I thoroughly enjoyed the process. I had fun bunking tuitions and reading books that are beyond the scope of the syllabus. This is how it was in school. And soon enough, we started winning far more quizzes than La Martiniere was in the year or two before. So in spite of being a new joinee, I was made school captain of quizzing, and I also won colors, which did my self-esteem as a quizzer a world of good. I felt I could at least compete with peers of my age group in my city. And that confidence, of course, incidentally, I should mention that Shakuntala Datta also inspired me almost as a teacher to consider pursuing English literature as an undergraduate course. So throwing aside the sort of MCQs that I was doing with PCMB, I had biology as well. I chose to pursue English Lit, again, controversial choice at an undergraduate level. Everyone in my class is either contemplating either science or med or law at best, if you have to, cut a corner somewhere. But no one in my peer group was considering English literature. So again, I chose to go off the beaten track in a manner of speaking, not too much. I still, wouldn't have pursued English literature perhaps if I was getting a lesser college at that point in time in my scheme of things. So things, happened to play out as expected. And I got into Stephens with English literature, and I felt that this was a shot in the arm that, I needed from the point of view of taking the La Martiniere exposure to extracurriculars to its logical next step. Stephens would have Delhi University and everything that comes with it. And I'm also entering a sort of field where I know there is a sufficient number of quizzers from Kolkata who have studied at St. Stephen's College. So if I were to pursue this hobby on the side quietly, I would have the opportunity to do so. So I chose to pursue English for 3 years. All three of us know how maddening Delhi University's inter-college circuit is. So let's not... Sorry, Abhinav?
Even in those days?
Yeah. We had, on an average, 3 to 4 quizzes every day. Yeah, those things haven't changed. The number of colleges in TU hasn't gone up.
Yeah.
So some sort of homeostasis is there. So we ended up quizzing quite a lot, and that's an understatement, as all three of us again understand. Delhi and undergraduate quizzing is it's a Roman feast, really. You have to pick and choose what you want to not attend more than what you can attend. So 3 years was a lot of fun. But towards the end of my third year, as I was getting into my master's in sociology from Delhi School of Economics, that's when I also began to attend a few Kutub sessions. And all of us in our current times tend to forget that DQC is continuing forward a legacy almost that was birthed with some people who felt that Delhi needed a quizzing club slash hub slash culture. So when I attended my first Kutub session, I felt it was a welcoming of diversity as far as questions are concerned. So, and this is something we might talk about later on as well. I soon enough did my first open quiz for Kutub quizzes, and it was a longish quiz. It was well received. So all of these approvals that started coming my way obviously started shaping what begins to become acceptable, what is seen as a good quiz. These ideas started crystallizing in my head gradually, and I hadn't set any quizzes apart from Chota Mota College Fests, one wildlife quiz as part of the Wildlife Society that I had done. But at an open quiz level, I started thinking about it in my masters, starting with setting a quiz and then beginning to gradually participate. Yeah.
Okay. So as you talked about you being there into quizzing for some time now, you would have seen some kind of a paradigm shift over time. But do you feel that sometimes traditionalists in quizzing see highbrow quizzes as being the only ones worth going to, basically trying to stick to their past and not coming into the times of probably a pop culture quiz that they don't enjoy as much?
Right. So when you say this kind of a paradigm shift, you're talking, say, a more pop culture heavy quiz versus a quiz on history?
Not really, but the formatting of quizzing has changed. The way questions are framed has changed, and of course the genres, as you talk about.
Right. Okay. So traditionalist is a loaded word. So let me try to break it down in a way I would talk to my students. So indulge me almost for the next 2 minutes, right? So there are traditionalists as I see it in all fields of social interaction, right? Because the desire to hold on to ideals and ideas that we value, all of us are on the scale. All of us have dear ideas and dear ideals that we like to hold on to, right? Some of us like to hold on to these ideas and ideals more than others do. But all of us are on the scale of valuing some things that have worked for us or that we think society appreciates or will put us in a good light when we present ourselves. Those values, we have all done that sort of mental arithmetic in our head and have settled on a set of values that sustain us, right? Equally, on the same token, all human beings like to engage in two kinds of quirks of behavior. One is we like to verify ourselves through the choices we make. And I'll explain that to you in a second with an example. At the same time, all human beings like to present themselves and engage in expressive self-presentation. So while there is some amount of strategic self-presentation, in this particular occasion, I should wear my glasses because glasses add this assumption of intellect in some cases, right? That's strategic self-presentation. Expressive self-presentation is me saying that given there are 3 posters up on my college notice board, one that says there is an open mic Western solo competition happening at Gagi College, dancing competition at say DCAC, and a quiz at another college, I would gravitate towards the activity that I know has a higher chance of allowing me to show myself in a positive light too, whose opinions matter to me. All of us, if we reflect hard on it, like to think about the real world in this manner, that we are very selective about what we choose to do or where we chose to showcase our expertise or showcase our knowledge. Now, if you think and go back to the question we were discussing, traditionalists would also have this niche for themselves, which over the years they have identified as something that works for them to the extent of giving them a positive sense of self when they find themselves in those scenarios. And that might have resulted in them becoming more keenly selective than someone who is still yet to explore knowledge, right? So going back to what you're saying, Abhinav, highbrow quizzing, one person's highbrow quiz could be another person's cakewalk.
True.
Right? It really depends on the context of the quiz, how, as a quiz master or as a quizzer, how one really assesses that this is how I acquire my self-esteem. And these are conversations that we should have more often than we do with ourselves. That if we really sit down and almost gridify self-esteem, we'll realize that there are 4 or 5 things that if I do well at, I feel happier about myself. There's a sense of self-actualization almost. And all of us at some level are guilty of that or do that. I mean, I wouldn't even say guilty of that. Traditionalists, or who we choose to label traditionalists, tend to do it with greater frequency than others. Right? So we can't really blame them for being, stuck in time, if I were to use that phrase, for the simple reason that it could be seen as an unfortunate outcome of not being able to invest as much time in immersing oneself in a subculture such as quizzing. All 3 of us and any quizzer who's listening to this or watching this would know that we would be woefully out of touch if we did not have the luxury of leisure and circumstances. If we did not have those 2 things going in our favor, we would not even have the bandwidth to quiz, let alone read up or make and set questions and any of that. So we should be very lucky that we have the time, circumstances, and leisure to support us in immersing ourselves in a subculture. For the ones who have other ways of aspiring to their self-esteem, might have these other ways of adopting those paths for themselves. So if that means they are frequenting these areas of quizzing, such as understanding in-jokes, understanding pop culture references, and hold it against them, it is slightly unfair, in my opinion.
So Arjo, you briefly mentioned Kutub quizzes.
Yeah.
So when I joined the Delhi quizzing scene, I distinctly remember, I think this was Cannot Place 2012 or 2013.
2013.
Yeah. So you had this Facebook event which had an F1 car as a cover image or something.
Yeah.
And I initially thought that this was a business quiz and overlooked it.
Oh,
and
damn.
Then,
okay.
And then someone told me that this is this hallowed place where the biggest quizzes from India compete. So I tried to dig in, but there's not a lot of material online or anywhere which actually documents how it all came about. So if you could tell us how it all happened.
Okay. So is this the Ood story then? That is this the founding story that will now be understood as the origin story? Then I have a lot of license. You realize that, right? Incredible license.
Your narrative is the narrative that the world will stick with.
All right, here we go. So it was an IIT Delhi quiz. This bit is true. And you can identify which part I'm going slightly off script, right? It's a test. So IIT Delhi quiz happened, and if I remember the audience correctly, that chose to break away from the audience at the end of the quiz, Avinash, Hari, Aniket, Supratim, Rahul, and soon enough in the conversations, we roped Shresht in as well, because then he was studying at Amity. So right after the IIT Delhi quiz, the ones who felt that enough is enough. I mean, we're in 2013. All cities that regularly participate or have a quorum, critical mass of quizzers tend to have a city fest. We're losing out. And we have the additional problem of dealing with Delhi. And we know Delhi has quizzers who lack the kind of allegiance to the city as, say, a Bangalore or a Chennai or a Bombay or a Calcutta quizzer lacks, because of the migration both in and out of the city, right? So you don't stay here long enough to form your allegiances and loyalties in that manner. So we felt that we have this argument stacked heavily against us, but let's try to do something about this gap. So we felt that first thing to do would be to come up with a name. And I think it was Avinash who came up with, over a couple of drinks, who came up with this variation on CP to make it Cannot Place, which made a lot of sense in the context of quizzing. So we ran with that. And I also remember, we almost staged a founding conversation at the bookstore in SDA Market. Yeah. So we staged a founding conversation we're all gathered there. This is all happening after the IIT Delhi quiz, so you know the reality now. So we went there, staged this. Someone is sitting on the staircase, and others are gathered and huddled together and trying to come up with cannot place. But this is how it came up. This identifying a challenge in getting regular open quizzes happening. You need the buy-in of the regular mature open quizzes in your city. They should know that there can be a fest with prize money and jazz and everything else. And for out-of-station participants, it became a useful way of expanding the community of open quizzers and regular events on the calendar for the regular open quizzer in the country. So let them know that this is also an option they can explore. It began in April. It was incredibly hot, and we had it in that spaceship-like structure at IIT Delhi. Slightly dystopic setting, but went off well. First edition, a lot of open quizzes traveled, and we thought we had to kind of take this forward. Another interesting conversation that happened. Soon after Cannot Place was done and dusted, 2013, Rahul was still in Delhi, and we used to, chat, quiz at my place in South Delhi. So when Rahul, one of these days, my erstwhile flatmate, Rahul and myself, we were chatting about quizzing and what can happen after Cannot Place. So we thought of a league in Delhi. Why not have an open quizzing league? So something on the lines of, say, football leagues or F1 leagues. So here I thought of a variation on Bundesliga for a Delhi version of a quiz league. So I thought of Fundesliga as the name, and that took off. For I think over 2.5 years, if I'm not mistaken, we had around 60 to 70 quizzes. So whichever college student, and there were the likes of Abhishek Kapoor and Gokul turning up for their, almost first taste of open quizzing in Fundesliga 2013, and we are in 2020 and we know where these quizzes are. So I think you guys also, Prithvi, I'm sure participated in a few Fundesliga sessions.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so it became a sort of an aspirational weekend gathering for college and open quizzes in Delhi for the 2.5 years that it ran. And then we felt it's high time to formalize things a little. That's when, Shubhankar, Fahad, Shresht, Shrikant, these guys formulated Delhi Quiz Club, DQC as we know it. And soon enough, with inclusivity as one of the overarching mandates, we began to open up the field. I also joined the course soon after. Kanika joined the course soon after. A few other open quizzes also joined. Kapoor also joined soon after. So since then, 2016, end 16, early 17 onwards, DQC has pretty gainfully carried on the mantle, that legacy of doing something where it's so difficult to get open quizzing done. So
what I felt is when I joined the Delhi quizzing scene, you were the go-to quiz master in the college scene, at least. And initially, I remember you did a quiz for Antaragni prelims and a couple of others, I don't remember. But there was this, not even an accusation, but there was this, how do you say it, a theory that your quizzes were a bit Eurocentric or a bit bent towards Western Mela and stuff. However, a year into it, when I got into quizzing much more in depth, I saw a gradual shift in your quizzes becoming much more balanced, and they were more towards the framing of the question and diversifying in topics. So was this something that I just felt, or was there a gradual shift that you saw in as a quizmaster?
First of all, I never thought of it as a conscious shift.
Okay.
If it seemed like a Eurocentric bias, there must have been. I'm not denying. In fact, if anything, I would, from the discussion we've had so far, if I were to think of the transition that you're talking about, Prithvi, the gradual diversification from certain favorite topics, I think any quiz that anyone ever sets is a reflection of what they're watching, reading, or listening at any point in time, right? And if you were to set an open gen today, Prithvi, the kind of things you would ask questions on might vary significantly from the kind of things you ask question on in the Gen finals in 2017. For instance.
Way off.
Right. So that kind of evolution or change in what the audience finally gets to, or the participants finally get to see on a slide, The background work happens in the choices the quizmaster makes when what they choose to read has changed. So 2016, 17, or maybe late 15, mid 15, I know that I picked up far few more books on India than I had before. Right, so I started reading little more on all things India. Started with art and culture, of course, because that was my gateway topic into quizzing. So I started looking at Indian art and culture to begin with, to pick up some interest in this supposed topic which gets asked questions on, and we don't seem to be answering these questions. So what's really wrong with us? Can't we read something about India and come better prepared for quizzes? So once you start reading about a topic, your motivations don't matter. They could be to win a quiz, they could be from genuine interest in the topic, they could be from having visited the National Museum, which also I did. And I just recognize that there is a lot by way of new fields of knowledge that one can acquire if they were to look at India as this body of knowledge, right? And so I started including more as a consequence almost of this. More India questions started to make their way into my sets, though I didn't let go of my Eurocentrism.
Right.
Right. I didn't think of it as a letting go in any case.
Yeah.
I thought of it as something that interests me enough for me to explore it as a body of knowledge. So the more I explored that, the outcome, the byproduct were questions. So while in Ali, even though in the first instance it was intended to make it seem balanced, it became perhaps from the perceiver's eyes a little more balanced after 1617.
Right. All right. So Arju, do you think academics or writers have an edge to quizzing when because reading is a part of their job per se?
But you're not reading the same things. You're reading different things.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps in certain ways. So, for example, if you are trying to engage a bunch of people who would rather be distracted,
Okay.
which are post-millennials in a classroom, you're as a lead learner, I like to believe that there are no teachers because I do not know more than my student, right? And I would be foolish to assume that I know more and am wiser than my student. So at best, I'm a lead learner, trying to facilitate their learning, right? Trying to almost be like an invisible coach, where you sit at the corner and see how the work you have set in motion, the kind of attitudes to learning that you have set in motion have taken off enough for your students to become autonomous learners. That for me is the point or objective of my teaching them, so that they can become independent learners themselves when the time comes. So from that point of view, if you were to speak to your students, the post-millennial bunch, in their own terminology, you would have to start speaking through pop culture in order to make it relatable in the classroom. If there are interesting management examples or interesting social psychological examples by way of, say, policies, right? Nudge is an interesting case in point. I've even asked a question on the birth of nudge philosophy through the Schiphol airport example in my classes, to understand that this is how behavioral economics came about. So what I'm trying to get at is the ways in which teaching or academia can help someone becoming a better quiz master or a better quizzer is by the same purpose that I try to use my quizzes for. I think of it as a medium that is making accessible information or knowledge that I thought is valuable or interesting.
Right.
It becomes the quizmaster's choice of almost a medium through which to share these experiences, right? And now with a quizzing audience, my point of view is that if I am sharing with you something that is a new story, something that you haven't come across before, but something that is interesting enough and of consequence enough to be aware of, then why not ask it in a quiz? And similar kind of impulse runs through when I use my quizzes for class discussions as well. Because often the question and the neural network that a participant or someone who's trying to answer the question employs, the same brain networks that you employ in answering the question, can help you become supremely better at analysis in general. And I have systematically tried doing this in my classes as well as study skills sessions that I often take with first year students to bring them up to speed on the London School of Economics expectations and so on. I've noticed that the moment you get them to work in teams and work their way through the text of a question, and like we try doing at quizzes, work a question out from the clues given, there's a far higher likelihood of you remembering how the concepts came together to help you answer it. So even when you're approaching your studies, your textbooks, you would begin to look at content from the point of view of this is what makes it interesting. If you begin to understand clearly what the bigger picture is, what the hullabaloo about this concept really is, then you must start. I mean, at least as a lead learner, I feel it is my responsibility to start from what is absolutely accessible and then work backwards towards the concept, as it were, after you have your students buy in. To get that buy-in, quizzing has been invaluable for me.
As in, you are served to Delhi quizzing in the capacity of a quizmaster far more than many of us. Do you sometimes feel that okay,
all controversial interpretation, subjectivity, but go on.
Yeah, but do you sometimes feel that you being a teacher has a good role to play in that, or how does your teaching skills basically merge into each other?
Yeah, so delivery is one thing. So when you're speaking to a class of 50 students, you know that you'll have to project your voice slightly, so so when it comes to thinking of skill cross-pollination from teaching into quizzing or quiz mastering, one cross-pollination would have to be audibility and how vocal you are at the venue. That is a significant benefit. The other benefit, like I shared with you, is the similarity of what I'm trying to achieve through this exercise. That I'm trying to perhaps persuade a quizzer into thinking of this as a topic that is worth reading upon. If I already know it and if I can answer it, great for you. But if you do not, then if I have managed to inspire you to explore this particular nugget or this story or this connection, that's also what I try to with my students when I try to introduce them to a concept using a quiz. If I'm able to inspire them to now go ahead and explore the topic on their own, you might not have qualified for the quiz, or you might not have done well in the quizzes in the classroom, but now you can perhaps, with your interest in exploring the topic, set an entire quiz on that issue, or write an entire paper on the topic or concept. So that little sort of lack of familiarity, that's when quizzes also begin to be labeled as difficult quizzes or over the top, over the head transmission, all of those. But I think there's an underlying benefit to that. If you are grappling with a concept or grappling with a trivia in a quiz, which motivates you to pursue it further, I think that's a win for both parties. So that's another important sort of convergence between teaching and quizzing, Abhinav.
Yeah. So as we're talking about you being a quiz master, do you remember the first quiz you ever created, as in by yourself?
Yes, very much so. I labeled it Minar because it was a Kutub session.
Okay.
And it was a longish quiz. It's around 50 questions, I remember. And I even remember sending it to Siddharth Sen for guinea pigging a week and a half before the quiz, which I realized, exactly your reaction, which I realized soon after from Sid Sen's feedback, is unprecedented. Do not set your quizzes 10 days before.
Okay, that also, yeah.
But what was your eyebrow for?
No, because I have never set a quiz that early. I've not even started setting the quizzes that early.
Yeah, you tend to be more enthused if it's your first open quiz.
Yeah.
I soon learned it the hard way and I started setting quizzes far closer to the deadline.
I think I sent you my LSR India quiz 3 weeks back because 3 weeks before the quiz.
Yes, you did, Prithvi.
Yeah.
So good to know that
questions go away, right? Because you find some of the questions coming online and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And
there are things that you might have thought of as original questions, but have been asked in the circuit as Peters.
Yeah.
Though that's a separate topic for discussion, because there is something inherently
controversial line.
fascinating. Controversial, very. But isn't it fascinating, guys, that the same, unless it's copy pasted, isn't it amazing that organically two different human beings or more have thought of the same story as interesting enough to ask other people to answer?
I have I'll say there's a bias to it because the sources we are picking these from have already labeled it as interesting. Let's say if it was from a book that you read over the years, that would make more sense. But in the current state, where it's mostly from a Reddit TIL or from this website or something, then it just goes away.
That's what. So if organically done, however, then it becomes almost like, wow, this doesn't happen very organically most occasions that we know, which is why Peters have such a bad rap in the circuit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a separate discussion.
And do you also remember the first ever paid gig that you did?
First ever paid gig? Yes. In fact, it was oddly enough at a speakeasy at Vasant Kunj for single people to mingle. And it was a funny setup because I was doing the quiz with questions that were primarily geared towards a pub quiz audience, but enough of a zing, enough of mainstream Hollywood. So it was a very funny. It was a dark room, as you can imagine. It's a subway speakeasy. This is underground, the speakeasy. Yeah, and it had a passcode to enter, all of that. So it was a discovery for me and fascinating at that. That was.
So Arjo, who has been your favorite quizmaster over the years? There could be multiple answers to this. That's fine.
Yeah. Thank you for that license. There are multiple answers. There is no one particular favorite quizmaster, but see, if I really think about it, the names that instantly come to mind in no particular order of preference, but this is the cluster that comes to mind. Dr. Naveen Jayakumar, Major, Physicians quizzes, Aardvarks quizzes, the open quiz that QED does, or used to do rather. QED doesn't do it anymore. Remembrance of Things Fast does that now. But I loved the QED open quiz that used to happen at QFI. It was pitched at a different kind of a level, not difficulty from the point of view of a quizzition quiz, but a different kind of challenge. Not the crossword kind of a challenge, which is why Arul was the next name on my list when he's not doing Google. Otherwise, Arul, I love Arul's quizzes. So these are the names that instantly come to mind. But that's a thing. When you begin to, which is an unfortunate trend among a lot of sort of budding quizzers and quizmasters, that they begin to copy the style of someone they admire. Starting from the slide template to the kinds of questions they use. You've seen this a lot, I'm sure, with people trying to ape Major style in asking questions. So that is slightly unfortunate because there is so much to explore at your own end. Traditionalists right now are probably sitting somewhere in their muse and smirking at these SlideShare whippersnappers. Right, but that's how it is. I mean, I feel every person who can write something has the ability to become popular and mainstream with the kind of choices they make on what they ask. The fine sheen of being able to articulate those is a lesser requirement. It's not even the first requirement. If you begin to upload your content on popular shared platforms like SlideShare or other means where you circulate your content with quizzers, and as your content begins to be appreciated, it can organically almost enter this bracket of doins, as it were. It's not some inaccessible vantage point where these people are at. It's very accessible where they're at from the point of view of the kind of questions they're asking. But you can do that too. All of us can do that too.